as a boy, I would look at all these videos and pictures and think, how cool would it be if I could be on that trip?
There's just not anything like it that I know in the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back here with I think it's our second episode, podcasting episode with Tim, our CEO, and we have Martin, who is our head of sales. And today the episode is really all about traveling. And I figured, you guys know traveling, like you guys travel for a living. So I figured we want to have the information straight from the source. So I guess I start with the question, what's the current state of traveling right now?
Thanks for having us, Sonny, in the beautiful Maldives.
Look at this.
It's a company trip, and that's a good question. What's the current state of traveling in COVID times? Well, I think you can probably break it down to 5 restricting factors that we are always looking at. One is the airlines. What are the airlines doing? The other one is what are the destination countries doing in terms of entry restrictions? The third is what happens if you actually travel back home? What kind of restrictions are you facing there? The fourth is probably booking safety. You probably don't want to end up spending a lot of money and then ending up with nothing. And the fifth is probably what kind of trips are relatively safe.
Right.
And actually, Martin, as a sales agent, he's even much more experienced with the daily questions that are coming up.
What are some daily questions? Like, what's the most common question you get right now?
Yeah, I guess the most common one is really just like, what's open? Where can I go? Like, people are still really itching to travel, and the most common one is where can I go and where can I fly to? So that's definitely the number one that we come to. Like I said, like you said, airlines, that's an important point. Many flight routes are pretty restricted at the moment. Some airlines are fully operating, some are having restricted paths and restricted routes, so that's an important one that you've got to check first. Many of the big major airlines, they're all offering really, really flexible terms. My trip to the Maldives here, we could rebook, we could cancel, there was no problems on it as well. And the prices were still quite affordable. So I think the airlines they're doing what needs to be done to get people moving, to get people flying again. And they all do have very different specific regulations. Some require PCR tests regardless of where you're traveling or where you're traveling from. So it's definitely an important point to look at who you're going to be flying with and if you can really get to where you want to go straight away.
I guess it definitely makes sense to fly with the bigger airlines, right? I booked my ticket here to the Maldives with a charter flight company. Eva is actually from Switzerland, and they changed my flight without notice, and actually basically 2 days back. So I would have met you a couple of days later, which is not good for a boat trip. But Emirates, they have still plenty of flights.
Singapore.
And they're pretty easy as well, right? Like, usually you can change your flight online. Like, that has changed so much from like the past, right? Where we had to like call in and like we were like just waiting in line for hours. Now it's like, I think it's super easy, and I think they learn as this whole pandemic goes on, right? Like, I guess, or they try to provide better customer service by just being flexible.
So we would always recommend to book with the airlines directly. I think that's sort of common knowledge as well. Like, there's so many great price comparison tools to find cheaper routes and the right routes, but especially now more than ever, book direct. Like, if you have any problems, if you need to refund last minute, getting that from one of the cheaper flight comparison websites is going to be tougher. And I think it's better to book with the airlines.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of feedback from our clients having trouble flying somewhere?
Honestly, no. I've had some very last minute cancellations where they unfortunately couldn't travel due to work issues or something super last minute with COVID and because of a new regulation implemented, and all of them have been able to get refunds or change their flights. So that hasn't been much of a stumbling block really in
I think like the only issue I see is like with the bigger airlines, they're very, very strict on the PCR tests and like what
Definitely,
needs to go on the test, right? Like I've seen or I've heard of people like getting turned away at the gate or at the check-in gate for not having their passport number,
Correct.
like stated on
some
the
airlines
test.
require them in English. Some you can have them in local language or any other language, but many of them require them actually in English as well. That's something you've got to make sure you get. Yeah.
So refunds is more of a problem, I guess, but at least you can always like change free of charge.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So and that's even for longer
Time
period.
Yeah.
And you definitely want to go at one point again.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't happen in this
They
month,
also let you change routes sometimes as well if they won't give you a refund. I mean, if you're booking with Qatar and you can't go back to where you booked, they'll let you pick a different airport as well.
Would you say like right now it's also the time to particularly purchase travel insurance? Or do you think it's kind of like the airlines are, they're so flexible that it's not really necessary?
No, you need it now more than ever. You don't want to think about the worst case scenario, but the worst case scenario is you do somehow unfortunately get COVID when you're on your trip, and that could be pretty crippling if you have to go to hospital or go into quarantine or something. So no, definitely, it's more important than ever to make sure you have travel insurance. It's all of the major providers are providing COVID cover. Even some airlines give it free. I think I remember you saying Etihad gave you COVID cover.
Yeah. So if you book with them, you actually get free COVID, like a free COVID insurance, which like in case of, obviously, if you have to go to the hospital or you get sick, I think the medical, the medical expenses are actually covered, and obviously that helps a lot, right? It's just this like extra layer of like security, extra layer of peace.
But no, definitely.
So that's basically airlines. The second point is entry restrictions, and
I think that's the biggest one, right? Because people, I guess, they're very scared of what's going on right now, of like where can they go, things change, but from our like own experience, because we're here, it's not all that bad, right? There's a little bit of I guess like logistical.
It's a new process to take part of, but once you've realised, maybe it looks a bit complex to begin with, but reality of it, I mean, at least for the Maldives, was very simple. Entry restrictions, it's a big one. I mean, it's always changing as well and updating. We actually have a really fantastic COVID tool at the moment that you can see the current up-to-date requirements from countries and from your specific destination as well. So definitely, that's a good tool to keep on top of what's changing. I'm sure you can link that in the video cast as well. And but there's been many. I mean, Maldives has opened back in July 2020, so relatively quickly, and they've stayed open throughout until now as well, and they've got a grip of it really, really well. They had strict regulations straight away as soon as they opened, with PCR tests and sort of restricted movement within the Maldives as well. And the Maldives also, sort of by its nature, allows for social distancing sort of just by chance. I mean, many people are booking private boat charters like we're on now here, and that limits the social interaction that you have with other people. And almost all of the charters that we're selling, the crews are vaccinated. They've actually done really, really well with vaccination as well. In the Maldives, almost half of the population was vaccinated, and most hospitality staff were very quickly. So that's Maldives. It's been open.
Central America has been fairly open, especially Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and El Salvador
as well. Yeah.
Those are the best bets for now, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It may change in the next couple of months, but for now that's actually really good. And countries that are opening now are basically, as a rule of thumb, those countries that are vaccinated quite well, right? And probably the little wealthier countries, such as the European countries.
It's looking good for the summer in Portugal, France, Spain as well, to get a Euro trip in as well. Those countries are opening up.
And Sri Lanka as well, right?
Sri Lanka as well has actually opened already. They've got quite a unique take on it, with a sort of what they call a travel bubble, where you need to book 14 nights in a specific set of hotels that they've deemed quality enough to quarantine in. You're not restricted to the hotel. You can still visit sites that they have approved, and there's hotels to suit all different budgets and tastes and preferences. But it's a way that they've managed to open the country, and get things rolling again, whilst minimising the risk.
But I guess if somebody looks at going to Sri Lanka, they would have to factor in like 2 weeks, right? Like
Exactly.
they have to stay 2 weeks
Exactly.
longer, because in those 2 weeks you're still pretty restricted. Like you
Yes.
can't go surf. So I think it's like after your 14th day, right? You have to take a third test or a second test, and then if you're negative, you can actually go to wherever you want to go, and that's kind of like when your trip starts.
Yeah, so this one is the most complex, definitely, out of all countries that have opened. From our clients here, I haven't had many people want to book with this process, because it does add. I mean, you need to then minimum have 21 days of vacation, or rather longer.
Yeah. Because it's kind of a waste, right? You're spending 14 days in quarantine, and you have 1 week of actual vacation, right?
Yeah.
But the quarantine you can still surf, right?
You can still surf if you got away within the hotel grounds, which there are a couple. But yeah.
And regarding Indonesia, like everybody's curious to hear. What
Everybody
the
wants to
deal-
get empty mental-wise. Indonesia is tricky. It's also changing and updating a lot all the time. It currently is possible with quite a few different procedures and hoops to jump through. But at the moment, you have to accept a 5-day quarantine as well in Jakarta. Which some people as well, it's off-putting. Others are happy to do that to reap the benefits of empty peak season Indonesia. That's one that we're going to be taking a
What
close
would
look
be the
on.
costs for the special visa and quarantine and?
Yeah, for the visa and everything, you're looking at roughly $500 for the visa, give or take. It's also fluctuating a bit as it goes. And the quarantine hotels, they also range. They've got a good selection of different quarantine hotels. If you're on more budget conscious, they're starting at $80-$90 a day for 5 days. Or they have some higher end hotels as well. And they provide everything. In that rate is all your PCR tests built in, full board meals, and they take everything. They take care of everything really.
But a lot of hotels are open then.
Yes.
In the Mentawais, in Sumatra, Sumba, pretty much everywhere.
Pretty much everywhere is open and running.
So for a long-term trip, actually quite interesting as well, right?
Definitely, yeah. Even if
5 days of home office.
5 days of home office, then
in a hotel in Jakarta.
2 weeks of Sumatra. Yeah. It's worth it.
It's a nice trade-off.
I'd say it's worth it. Yeah.
And so we're talking about the countries that are opening or open right now. What is a no-go right now? Like what's still kind of like a stop and go, and you know like what's closed right now and you can't really travel to?
I mean, in snow, the US and Canada are no-goes, and it's looking a bit tricky. Or we're not certain yet for this coming winter what's going to be possible or not. There's Fiji and some of the Pacific islands are still fully closed, and that's not possible to travel at the moment.
Yeah. What about Morocco?
Morocco, they did open last year, but it was a bit tricky with some beaches were closed and other things were closed, and surfing was possible, but it was sort of also going through some loops a bit, and it wasn't perfect. It's closed at the moment, but we're yet to see. Let's see what happens.
I mean, there's definitely some challenges to overcome, but the destinations are definitely less crowded.
You get the rewards.
That's-
We're looking at yin yangs here with nobody out since
Like 4 to 5 foot.
nobody out since 6 hours already. Yeah.
It's going great.
That's what you get.
But then there's also the safety measures in the destination, right, itself, right? I mean, our clients need to be aware that, partying well, some places you can still do it, I guess. But
Just leave your phone at the door.
but others probably not.
Yeah, so
Um,
the countries have their own restrictions. Also, the operators, the hotels, the resorts, the boats, they'll have their own COVID protocols in place as well, which are really varying. Most of them are promoting, everything that's common knowledge, social distancing, wearing masks when you're traveling around between areas.
Yeah. I guess just
But that's-
use common sense as well, right? I mean, it's very
Definitely.
simple, really.
Yeah.
So that was the third point. Second point. Third point is basically what happens if you're returning home, and that is sometimes easy, and sometimes even more tricky than getting into the destination.
Yeah.
Right. And it always depends a little bit on the travel corridor as well. So what we did on our website is we basically for every travel corridor, so let's say from England to Maldives, we basically point out the rules for entering the destinations and also coming back on our website. And we have done that for basically all major travel corridors. But the big question is, do people need to quarantine?
That changes as well, right? Like depending on where you're flying home to, it changes a lot actually.
That exactly. And it changes every day, more or less, depending on the current COVID rates in the different countries. But that, and from our experience, that puts off a couple of people because there's some customer markets where people would need to quarantine for 10 or even 14 days up on return. But that really depends on the country. Some countries you can basically get out of quarantine like after 5 days with a PCR test or even anti-gen test. So, any experience especially?
No, definitely. I mean, it's
what are the countries that can travel fairly easily?
Many of the European countries can travel fairly easily around.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got cut off by an empty battery, and I think we cut Martin off. He was just talking about some of the countries, or like the restrictions in some of the countries, how they differ, and like how easy it is to travel from some, and a little bit harder from others. So yeah. Sir,
Thank you.
try again.
Not the end of the world. We got a coffee from the crew here. God, they treat us so well, right?
Really well.
So it's just talking about entry restrictions and which countries can. Traveling home restrictions.
Yeah.
And most of the European countries can travel pretty freely, as you were saying. Again, it also depends on the destination that you're looking at, and some do have quarantine, like shorter quarantines or quarantines that you can get out of with negative PCRs. But yeah, most of Europe can travel quite freely. Also, the US as well can travel quite freely as well. It's really Australia and New Zealand that are very tight.
I actually have a question, because like you guys are sales and you deal with obviously customers every day, right? For me in marketing, it's sometimes kind of hard to see what actually goes into booking a trip or just talking somebody else through a trip or through destinations. So for me, what I would like to know is like, what has changed? If you compare selling a trip or like talking with somebody now versus let's say a year ago, like what has changed?
The process has changed quite a lot actually. I mean, I think people are more hesitant to book. They may be returning to their firm favourites that they know and that they trust, rather than reaching out to new options that might have been a risk reward. They definitely have more questions at this time. They have more. They're more worried about refunds and booking conditions and how it's going to be once you're there, which is obviously fully understandable, and that's part of it. There's obviously many more questions that you're going to need to be answered at the moment with booking a trip. So that's I would just say just each process, putting each trip together probably takes a little bit more time, and you need a little bit more dedication.
It's actually good for us because we add more value, even more value to for a customer to book a trip, yeah, because they have tons of questions, and especially Martin or Nacho or the other salespeople, they're dealing with it every day, yeah, and they can answer the questions.
Let you know how it was from experience, and how it went. Like I said, it seems complex, but there's many people have travelled during this time, especially to the Maldives, and have realised how it went and reaped the rewards of this, as we said, and they've booked again and again within this time period, just because they got a piece of what they're used to, but without the crowds, and the processes are not actually that complex.
I mean, it's definitely possible to travel. Like we're the living proof, right?
Yeah,
we're here in the
yeah.
Maldives, and it's been amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, breaks, surf is pretty much empty, so
Yeah.
we've been having a blast, really.
I think all of these points as well probably come sort of all mingle into the last pretty important.
Well, there's two more important points. One is the booking safety, and the other one
Exactly.
is what trips are relatively
Safe at the moment.
And booking safety is actually kind of an easy one. Right now, you don't want to book a hotel that doesn't refund you or doesn't at least change dates free of charge
Yeah.
when you're not able to travel.
But you guys would tell people, right? Like if they would look
Definitely,
at an
it's the
option
first
that's
thing.
maybe a little bit harder to deal with, you would tell them,
Yeah,
right? Like,
it's the first thing we talk about, really. Also, with we know the operators that are willing to offer complete refunds or change of dates very, very freely, and obviously those are the ones that we're favouring, because that's what people are requiring to book. And I mean, like all the points that we mentioned, with the returning home quarantines changing all the time. I mean, it's all fine until it changes last minute on your trip, and you want to have that security that you can move your trip or get a refund if possible. So like you said, it's quite simple, and it's obviously very, very important at the moment. But we're making sure that we can offer the most flexible terms possible.
That works actually
Give
quite
you
well.
peace of mind.
Works actually quite well. I mean, most of the hotels, they have extra capacity anyway, so it's not so much of a problem for them to offer flexible terms, right?
Yeah.
And those who do offer flexible terms, they are getting booked, and that's good for all of us.
I guess we're all in this together, right? And it creates this like community feel, because like in this time you just need to be a little bit more flexible. And I think hotels, partners, operators, they kind of understand that as well.
Definitely. Yeah.
That brings us to the last point, which is what kind of trips, what style of trips are relatively safe. I mean, obviously, again, the Maldives are perfect. I mean, the little islands. If there's a high infection rate, you can actually kind of lock down the whole island quite easily. There is not so much mingling between people. Boat trips, perfect.
Yeah, I guess we haven't seen anybody else.
Yeah, I haven't been in
Like,
touch
it's
with anyone
just-
apart from you
it's
guys.
just us,
Yeah.
right? I
It's
see
okay
you
at the
guys'
moment.
faces every morning and every night when I go to sleep.
And the crew is actually vaccinated. Pretty much. I think all of them have a second shot already.
Yeah.
That
That doesn't take away the risk completely, but it's obviously a huge
much
part
better.
of it.
Well, I
much
mean,
better.
it's
And,
probably the likelihood of getting infected at home
Exactly.
is higher than here on the boat.
boats.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Or small resorts, boutique hotels.
And
I think-
actually, throughout the Maldives, they've been vaccinating really heavily, really well. Like the hospitality staff and staff on resort islands.
And the resorts here as well, like they take it pretty serious. I mean, they have some good restrictions in place, and I
For the
think
reasons.
they take
Yeah.
safety very
Safety
serious.
first.
Yeah.
I mean, usually like, we do those Maldives trips basically every year to visit our partners and also resort partners.
Yeah.
And this trip is different because like every resort visit, we need to present a negative PCR test, not older than 48 hours.
Yeah, they all have sort of, again, like I mentioned, they all have slightly different regulations and rules with how they're handling it, but they have definite policies in place to make sure it's safer for everyone.
I guess like outside of the Maldives, like where would you send people to right now? Like what is another great destination that's relatively safe, has, you know, adequate safety and health regulations in place? Like, what will be another great destination?
So like we said, I mean, sadly the options are a little more limited at the moment, but Central America is definitely the one, and probably maybe the more remote areas where you're not encountering so many people. There's some great resorts in Nicaragua that, you know, you picked up with a private transfer, taken down to the resort, and like contact is kept to a very minimum after that. And I think that's Central America and the Maldives is where we can
and I guess
really push it.
As the time goes on, more countries are going to be opening up, and I think you know, if you guys want to stay up to date, head over to LUEX.com, and we update our Corona tool every week. So, you know, every week we definitely have the latest restrictions online, and I think it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah, we have some great boat trips as well in Central America. Those, like you said, like boats are always great to keep social distance, and just the more remote areas, I guess, where there's not staying in a city.
All right, boys.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers, man.
For this interview.
Yeah. It was a long way for you guys, from the back of the boat to the front of the boat to do the podcast. I really appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure.
All right, so let's go surf, huh?
Let's make the most of empty Maldives.
Let's do it.
Perfect.
Yin yangs.
Alrighty.
Cheers,
See you
guys.
See ya.
We at LUEX are all about finding the best trips for you, for your requirements, your ability level, your taste and preferred style. Just the best options in the world.
LUEX offers you the world's largest selection of travel packages. We can offer you hundreds of unique and absolutely amazing travel experiences. No matter how special your requirements are, we will have the right option for you, guaranteed. The choice is only one side of the coin. The other one is the LUEX Objective Expert Advice to help you select the best option available. We have visited all destinations ourselves and know exactly what package will suit you and what won't. We also guarantee you the best available prices. In the unlikely case that anybody offers you the same package at a lower rate, just let us know and we will beat that price for you. We will be there for you 24/7, and we will spend as much time with you as it takes to find the best travel package possible and to assist you before, during and after your trip. Last but not least, you will enjoy the highest customer protection possible. Check out our website for details. We are living on repeat business and will make sure you get what you deserve.
Seen enough? Well, then give us a call if you want to ride the most amazing waves or some of the world's finest powder. Just check out LUEX.com.